I hope so, because you're now on the interweb.
I'm on now?
Yes. Sorry. So welcome back to the live stream. Hopefully we are live streaming, and hopefully the echo situation is more or less fixed. I looked back at the last episode, and it's like 95% there. There's still a little few more tweaks to make.
We're getting there,
but it's getting there.
and that's why we appreciate your Patreon, because everything that our donors give us goes into the construction of this extremely technical.
You laugh, but I've been in here many frustrating days trying to get it all to work.
Well, I'm not laughing.
But it's coming along. I'm happy.
Bruce Wayne had nothing on this place.
There's a few more things to do, but yeah, it's coming along. So this is still the Murphy's Law live stream. Maybe it'll become the Dave Park Show. I don't know, but this is where we are. Until Dave comes up with another name, I keep hassling him,
And
hackling about what we should call it. Maybe something that's more inclusive than just the Jack Murphy Show.
I don't know.
The Dave and Jack Show?
I don't know. Jack and Dave Show?
Jack and Dave, Dave and Jack.
I don't know.
The Dave Murphy Show?
The Jack Park Show?
It's undecided.
No.
But here we are. This is episode 4. And so, we should probably reintroduce ourselves a little bit.
Absolutely.
There are always people who come in and ask, who are you two weirdos on the internet?
Yeah.
Are you in your mom's basement? What are you doing? Why is this a thing? Why do we need these two guys offering commentary on the internet? And to see the morass of commentary.
Right. It is a morass.
That's out there.
Morass.
And I saw some good ones today. Some good morass. And in good, I mean juicy. Like the social commentary is written. We get into all that. But anyway, I'm Jack Murphy. I have spent the last about 7 years working as a journalist, a writer, a reporter. I've written novels. I've written works of journalism. I've done investigative journalism. I've done combat reporting from Iraq, Syria. I've reported from the Philippines, from Europe, from South Korea, a few other places. I've written 4 novels, working on the 5th. I wrote 1 memoir, so 1 nonfiction book, and a few other nonfiction.
I think there's some debate about your memoir being fiction or nonfiction.
Yeah, I know. But you read my lies.
Yes. You were knee deep in hand grenades.
I mean, your peers are always the toughest sell because they're like, really, Jack? Is that how it happened?
Yeah.
It went down just like that.
I'm sure that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. And so now I'm striking off doing my own thing here, and we're doing this live stream. It's going to be turned into a podcast as well. I know a lot of people out there keep asking me, can you put it on iTunes? Can you put it on SoundCloud? Yes, that is the plan. I've been looking at options of how I would strip the audio right out of the live stream, which is not difficult to do, and upload it on SoundCloud. So yes, I will get that done. The other thing I've been working on is for people who we interview remotely, so that the quality of it is good, and how do I port those people from Skype right into the software that streams online. So I'm working on that, and have this laptop here in front of you, Dave, and working on the software solutions for that. So it's all in the works.
Oh, this is the new one, the new used one.
Correct.
Nice.
And then this is also a stream that we have a little bit of an identity dysfunction because we're covering news and current events and military and veterans issues and all that kind of stuff. Because Dave and we both served in Army Special Operations, and I actually had one of the listeners suggest this, that we do it 1 and 1. So we do 2 live streams a week, and one is serious, more journalism or more commentary on things going on around the world at the moment. And the other would be more the kind of geeky hobbies that we're into, comic books and D&D and comic movies and all that kind of stuff. So maybe that's the way to do it. You like it?
Probably, because I mean, at the end of the day, some of you who want commentary on the news and international affairs in particular, I think, aren't interested at all in Punisher Soviet, which is coming out, so pre-order it now. And then some of you who are into comics don't really care about the news, which is fair too. So it is, we want to be able to do what we want to do, which is both the commentary on international events and the news
without turning people off.
And we also want to be able to geek out without turning people off. So,
sorry, I'm just throwing this up on Twitter right now.
That's right.
The stream itself. So maybe what we'll do is so this is episode 4, and we're going to talk about some current events going on today. Maybe what we do is episode 4.5 is the nerd dungeon.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
And then episode 5 we would be back to hard news, and then episode 5.5 we would be back to geeking out over rolling d20s for your level 7 bard.
Right. So what would we do for number 6?
Number 6 would be back to regular news.
Okay.
And I say news, but also interviews.
Sure.
I want to do a lot of spotlight interviews. I already have a list of people made up for that.
Which I owe you.
You have a few people that you suggested that actually I'm really excited about.
Yeah. Stay tuned.
But wait, there's more.
No, wait, there's more. If you order the Bassmatic, that's probably trademarked by SNL. They're too young to know that.
The bag of glass?
No, the Bassmatic. It was Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah, Dan Aykroyd was the bag of glass guy. He was the shady toy seller.
Yeah.
Kids, I got this bag of glass here.
Yeah, but this was the Bassmatic. He took a fish, a real fish. It was dead, but it was a real fish. And it was about, are you tired of eating your fish? And so they had the Bassmatic, which was basically just a blender, but it had a Bassmatic sign on it. And he dropped the fish in the blender, with water, and it chummed it up, and then he drank it.
Oh. Those guys were crazy back in the day.
Oh yeah.
Those some of them have talked about the after parties, the SNL crew back in the 80s.
I'm surprised any of them are still alive.
Yeah, Aykroyd's still around.
Yeah. Well, I know. Yeah. So what did you want to leave? You've got a couple things on your mind.
Yeah.
A couple things that caught your attention in the news today.
A couple things to opine on.
A couple things to
let's see here. I did, and I wrote them down. I made a list. So the first one that caught my eye was that Special Operations Command is looking for some outside help for their current predicament with ethics. And I'm actually trying to open this link now.
So what, for people who might not be familiar with it, first off, what is Joint Special Operations Command?
Special Operations Command is the command that includes all of our various special operations components. So they work within a joint environment. So SOCOM is nestled over the entire military-wide special operations apparatus, which includes the Navy SEALs, the Army Rangers, Marine Special Operations, MARSOC, Air Force Combat Controllers, pararescue guys, Army Special Forces, and then there's a sub-command within that called JSOC, which would include Delta Force and SEAL Team 6. And SOCOM has had a very unfortunate run in the media the last few years, especially because of some of our personnel not quite acting up to snuff. Allegations about drug use, war crimes, smuggling drugs from South America, just some really nasty stuff. And it's one story after another, bam, 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 bam.
Brigands and brigands.
And after trying to deny that there was a problem for the longest of time, it's sort of like how the Pentagon handled the sexual assault issue, that they ignored it, and ignored it, and ignored it, and in the meantime, the problem got worse and worse and worse and worse. And that's what happened with special operations, I think, is that they tried to sweep it all under the carpet, and the problem just got worse and worse. So now they are putting out, a request on FedBiz Ops, which is a place where the government, by law, they have to allow bids, contractors to put bids on various things that the Pentagon needs. And let's see here, what exactly they're looking for. They posted an announcement on August 2nd that intends to negotiate and award a sole source contract with Merit Leadership, Inc. The notice was published on the government's business opportunity site known as FedBiz Ops. And apparently this is an effort to bring in some outside help.
What's the name of the company that they're bringing in?
I'm sorry, I lost it. Merit Leadership, Inc.
Who is that?
I actually know nothing about them.
Let's Google it real quick and see who runs that.
Okay.
I'd be curious.
I would say 9 to 10 odds.
It's a general. Yeah, it's
retired colonel or retired general, who's in good with SOCOM,
and probably with like a West Point ethics teacher or something.
That's absolutely. I mean, when I was in Special Forces, I saw former members of the Special Operations community working as contractors and just selling the most asinine products to our unit. And like literally selling garbage to their former unit. Like, and their instructors would be like, yeah, we don't even care if you come to this class or not because we're already paid. So what the fuck ever. It was a total boondoggle. And I'm not saying that this Merit Leadership Inc. Thing is a boondoggle. I know nothing about them, as I just said. But we're going to look it up here and see who they are. Merit Leadership. About Merit. I don't see anything here about who they are. There's a book, Business Ethics Field Guide. I see email, phone number. I don't see anything on here about who they actually are.
Merit or Merrick?
Merit, M-E-R-I-T.
Oh, Merit.
Merit. Yeah. So, I mean, maybe they do good work. I could not say. I have no idea. But as...
When was their site copyrighted? If you go down to the bottom.
It actually, I do not see it here. I see a copyright sign. I don't see when.
Okay.
When. And like the about Merit, let me see here. About Merit Leadership, there's nothing. Yeah, there's nothing there. However, what I would point to is a retired Special Forces colonel who, I don't know if he intended his comments to be public or not, so I won't say his name, but he's a very smart person whose opinion I respect. And he points out that ethics is not something that we can just kick over to chaplains and lawyers or outsource to people outside of the military. One of the reasons why I got out of the military in 2010 was because it seemed like we were trying to run an email-based organization and everything was increasingly turning to online training modules. It's like a way to supplant leadership, real leadership, instead of a first sergeant like being hands-on, being like, hey kid, what's wrong? Like, come into my office, have a drink, tell me what's going on. Instead of that, we have online training modules. So there's like one about why you shouldn't kill yourself. There's one about why you shouldn't get drunk and drive your car off a cliff. There's one about why you shouldn't get drunk and drive your motorcycle off a cliff. And all those things, and then you get a little certification, you print off the computer, and you go and you hand to, the staff element, the B team, in the case of Special Forces, so that, the commander can put it in a binder, and then when one of his soldiers go and kill themselves, they can say, he took the course. It's completely cynical. It's a completely cynical approach to leadership, quote unquote leadership,
right.
That I really disagree with, that replaces the hands-on aspect. And I think that is what this retired colonel was pointing out, is that you can't outsource ethics, that it has to be a part of the unit culture. And how you teach ethics and bring ethics into the unit is difficult. There's not an easy answer to that. And I'll let you go, Dave, but the only last point I wanted to point out here is, on this particular subject, is the way the military works is that whenever there's a problem, there has to be a fix.
Right, and it's knee-jerk.
Woe unto the lieutenant, captain, or major that goes to their colonel or general and says, we have this problem, but we don't know what the fix is.
Right.
There always has to be a fix. And the fix is, online training, mandatory online training, right? You can't solve an ethics problem through this. And maybe they're a little hesitant to go to the general and say, look, there's not an immediate fix for this. There is no knee-jerk reaction
Right.
that can give your unit ethics. I think that ethics is something, first off, it comes through accountability. And it's not something that you can teach through a PowerPoint presentation. It's
Right.
something that soldiers have to absorb from their leaders from a very young age.
Well, ethics in itself, I mean, I know sort of how we use ethics on the street, but I also think that ethics is more of a philosophical study. It's not, you know what I mean? It's well, basically what they're going to go in there and do, I presume, is, hey, doing some of the stuff you've been doing is bad. Don't do that. That's not really ethics. You know what I mean? That's not really, I don't know. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they will start postgraduate studies in ethics for the special operations community. I don't know.
I will say that when I was in special forces, when I went through the Robin Sage exercise, there are ethical dilemmas you're placed in.
Sure.
Because in a real life scenario, a special forces soldier in an unconventional warfare environment, you're going to be exposed to alcohol,
Yeah.
women,
Yeah.
drugs,
Uh-huh.
opportunities to launder money,
Uh-huh.
launder your own op fund, or conduct your own entrepreneurial ventures out in the field, to personally enrich yourself. There are all of those sorts of temptations.
Right.
So in the Robin Sage exercise, they try to expose you to a little bit of that. Like, again, I don't want to shock John Q. Public, but in the Robin Sage exercise, you're exposed to alcohol. But I think you should be, because in real life, there's going to be alcohol out in the field, and
Sure.
you need to know
If you can, how much you can drink before you can't go out on an op.
where is your limitation? Where are your limits? You need to know that. Same thing with women. You know where your limits are. So there are other ethical dilemmas that you're exposed to, like, hey, our guerrilla force, the indigenous forces we're working with, are about to execute this prisoner. What do you do? Do you...
Who's the prisoner?
I mean, executing prisoners is, against the laws of land warfare and the Geneva Convention and all that.
That's what I meant.
But at the same time, you're only 12 guys out in the field by yourself.
Right.
Do you throw yourself in front of their guns to stop it from happening?
Right.
That's not your job.
Well, the other thing is, I mean, you also have to, I mean, there's also the question of, now what do you do with the guy? I mean, is there a detention system set up? Is there a detention system set up where he won't be right back out on the street the next day? I don't. It's a very complicated question. And here's, I mean, I want to also add this, that I don't want to speak for Jack, but I don't think Jack, and I know I'm not saying that the special operations community is rife with ethical issues any more than any other community. It's just that.
But we do have a lot of guns.
It's just that it's amplified. I mean, if you have 5 people doing the wrong thing, it's a small community. It's a tight knit community, and they're going to get a lot of press. They're going to get a lot of media because there's also a mythology behind them. And they. They're the modern day warriors in the eyes of of Hollywood, of everybody. I mean, when they make a movie about an assassin or this or that, they were always a former Green Beret or a former SEAL or a former Ranger or whatever. So there's this whole idea behind it. So there's a weight when some of them go off the reservation. But in any community, any demographic, anything, people are going to go off the reservation because people go off the reservation.
There's a human factor.
Right.
And especially after 12 deployments.
Right.
Changes who you are as a person.
Well,
doesn't mean you're a bad person, but I'll say that you can start off as a very good person on deployment 1, and by deployment 12, you're somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah, there's truth to that for sure. But it's also that, whatever we are, whatever our circumstances are for a long enough period of time, and that doesn't have to be a very long period of time. Like if you look at the Stanford prison experiment,
Yeah.
right? They didn't even run the full extent of that. They had to cancel it quickly because whatever your sort of circumstances are surrounding it become the new norm very, very quickly.
Right.
And that doesn't matter. I mean, that can be.
There's a fair amount of groupthink as well. Like it's very rare that there's going to be a person who's going to like stand up in the midst of their peers and be like, you know what? I don't think that's right.
Right.
You guys need to knock that off.
Right.
Very rare for.
Well, especially when what's right and what's not. I mean, there are obvious grievances. There are obvious outliers. I'll say. Mm-hmm. What happened to the Special Forces the Special Forces soldier with the SEALs and the MARSOC guy, right?
Melgar,
right,
who was allegedly murdered by 2 dev group operators.
Right. So that obviously, if it happened the way it was reported or assumed to happen. Obviously, that is an issue. That's an outlier. But there are a lot of times in combat when what's right and what's wrong,
difficult.
It's a very thin line. And what's right one day might be wrong the next day.
I think there's the one example that the public might be aware of, or that you could go and Google and learn about, is Command Master Chief Slavinsky, dev group operator, who during what was the battle? Was it Anaconda? Where he had one troop was shot and killed. He believed killed. It was an Air Force guy, and he had to make a decision: do I break contact with the enemy and try to save the lives of the rest of my guys, or do we go and try to recover his remains? That's an ethical decision, and I mean, I'm thankful I wasn't in his shoes.
Right.
Because whatever decision you make in that moment, you're going to have to live with the consequences. And neither one is nice. Neither one is a preferred outcome.
And that's the thing is, and there's so much, I mean, a lot of times it comes down to just the randomness of the battlefield as to whether you're a hero or a zero because of the decision you made.
For sure.
You can make that decision 100 times and 99 times. Everybody's like, oh my God, such a hero. And then, the one time it was like, what an idiot. What was he thinking? How could he do that? Because that's what we like to do. That's what people like to do, is we like to armchair quarterback things that, we don't actually face.
Yeah, and these guys have to make very difficult decisions in combat conditions.
All the time. Constantly, constantly.
I always want to point out, even if you make the wrong decision, sometimes it's better than no decision.
I think that the wrong decision oftentimes is better than no decision. And because you can't get into a state of mind where you stop making decisions for fear of being wrong. That's what gets people killed.
But then there are also, I need to point out that there are some clear ethical decisions that are wrong.
Correct. No, 100%. And look, but I just... true. And so, but I just wanted to say that, we're not saying that the special operations community is rotten or anything like that.
There is a vein of rot, though, that needs to be addressed.
These people are being brought in because of significant acts of a very small minority of people.
Yes, it is the minority of the overall. I mean, how many people are in Special Operations Command? It's crazy. It's 60,000 people or something like that. But they're also contending with things like spousal abuse. One Special Forces soldier allegedly murdered his wife. I know of another Naval Special Warfare guy who is under trial for allegedly murdering his wife. And some of these things have hit the media and some haven't. It's interesting.
Right.
It's interesting. Some have been huge media fanfare, and some have just gone totally under the radar.
Right.
So it's interesting to see which ones pop up and which don't.
Right.
But clearly there are some, and I mean, I think, again, guys are placed in situations where there's a lot of temptation, but I also think this is the fallout of, 18, 19 years of war.
I mean, that might add to it. I mean, I won't say it doesn't. I don't know. But I also think that bad people are going to do bad things. And, like the spousal abuse. I mean, I don't know how much of that is, related to
Combat, how much is
like combat stress, post-traumatic stress, whatever. I don't know.
In some cases, people are, I believe, sociopaths before they ever get to the
100%. There was always that guy who, wanted to cut squirrels or whatever. But
it's funny you mentioned that.
But everybody else was like, dude, that's wrong. You know what I mean? It's not like everybody else is like, yeah, let's cut up the squirrel. It's like,
It's funny you mentioned that because I've been working on a story for a long time about somebody who abused animals and cut up the squirrel, and then.
Well, I think that's like one of the classic signs of the broken brain of a sociopath when they're children is that they harm animals.
Yeah, like no empathy whatsoever. So that is that's going on. The other thing I wanted to bring up, I saw something posted by John Robb, who is a theorist, I guess you could say even philosopher, has written a lot about the future of warfare. And I've interviewed him before, very, very smart guy. I'll try to get him on here sometime. Just super smart guy, very forward-thinking person. And he posted this today on his public page. And he said, his friend sent him this, and he said, interesting conversation with a charming, intelligent, well-educated, well-read, well-traveled Chinese national graduate student at UT Austin today. Here's what I learned. 1. The United States is paying the leaders of the rioters in Hong Kong. This is a proven fact. 2. American sympathy for liberal democracies like Taiwan is insincere and only deployed as a point of leverage to keep China down. 3. China has never attacked another country. She had never heard of China's 1950 attack on Tibet, nor its 1962 attack on India, nor its 1969 attack on the Soviet Union, nor its 1979 attack on Vietnam. 4. Once the Democrats have the presidency again, the U.S.-China trade war will end. I think I succeeded in disabusing her of this point. 5. Multi-party liberal democracy is too inefficient to be a viable system of society and governance. That point might actually be true in a country of 1 billion people.
Sure.
6. The United States Army has no authority over Americans inside of America, and this is a core source of American weakness. This is why America cannot, for example, control forest fires as effectively as China, where the PLA has the full authority over the citizenry. It is also why America invades other countries, because our army is unable to occupy itself with domestic duties. 7. I do not need it to be a communist to love my country. End quote.
It's funny because it's like a bunch of privates are sitting around the barracks and they're bored and everything, and so the first sergeant's like, all right, we gotta do something. These guys they're bored. We can't go occupy. We can't go occupy. Downtown Tacoma. So. Let's go invade Poland. Let's go invade Poland. Let's do that.
Well, there's a real question too. Like, nobody really understands how the command and control system in China works. Like, for instance, my daughter is here in the studio and she's talking to herself as she plays video games. As I took a class on Chinese foreign policy years ago. And the professor pointed out that there's really no understanding of what the command and control system in China, like what stops a Chinese general from just being like, God damn it, we need to invade Taiwan right now. Like, what is the political or military control structure that stops that from happening? No one's quite sure. I mean, it's China, it's a dictatorship, so there's a lot of things that are nebulous, they're gray. We don't really understand what the backroom politics of China are.
Sure.
But I thought that little excerpt was interesting as far as a little bit of perspective from a Chinese national and graduate student and how they see the world.
I would have been curious to know her thought on the Uyghurs. You know,
Probably says it doesn't exist. Probably says there's no issue there.
you know, the Uyghurs are considered probably the most surveilled people on the face of the planet. They're constantly watched, facial recognition everywhere. And did you hear about the latest like hacking thing?
In regards to the Uyghurs?
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
So this is kind of fresh. So Chinese hackers basically went into Uyghur sites, the news sites, and
Magic. I'm just an innocent everybody.
the sites that Uyghurs would go to, so their news sites and things like that. And they planted bugs, viruses, whatever they are, that when mobile phones, the Uyghurs would visit these sites, and both their iPhones and their Androids would connect with these sites. The sites would implant, they would basically hack, the site itself would hack the phone so that they put all these people under surveillance. So they cracked iPhones, they cracked Androids, and basically...
Holy shit.
Yeah.
And, from the perspective of, Chinese apologists, it's all a big CIA conspiracy theory.
Right.
That all these people are being herded into, at best, re-education camps,
Right.
at worst, concentration camps.
I mean, I think the numbers almost they estimate up to 1 million Uyghurs are getting a fine education.
And it's a totally different perspective, because from the American perspective, it's like, oh, diversity and this and that. From the Chinese perspective, it's like, we need to harmonize the entire culture into a harmonious one.
Right. And for those of you who may not know or kind of be up on, because it's not really talked about much, the Uyghurs are a sort of indigenous, sort of like the Hmong in Vietnam. The Montagnards. The Montagnards in Vietnam, where they were actually they were the indigenous people of that area before the Vietnamese, who, like the mainland Vietnamese, I don't think they're not like the natives.
They're not the original indigenous people,
Right.
like the American Indians.
Right. And the Hmong are like that in China, so far as I know, and they're also a Muslim population. I'm pretty sure. But they're not. But it's kind of a different strain of like Uyghur women don't dress very modestly. It's not.
They're not wearing hijabs and
No,
things like that.
no, not at all. I know a lot of that. I think is like the Eastern European sort of influence. That they dress very. I don't know. They dress like they're going out.
I honestly don't know the history or the culture well enough to speak to it. I wonder if there's like some strain of Zoroastrianism out of Iran or something even. But that'd be interesting to research.
Well, I think a lot of those, it's like when Buddhism went in Tibet and, it merged with the Bon religion, the Bon shamanism. And, so you got Tibetan Buddhism out of that, which is very different than other types of Buddhism.
Right.
But you go to Thailand and their Buddhism is different. It's more...
In Japan, you have like Shinto Buddhism.
Right. And I think that's the way it is with a lot of, there are compromises. It's why.
Right.
It's
Like
why
Islam in Africa tends to have a different strain.
Exactly. It's like in Latin America, why the Virgin Mary is so emphasized, because, there was already that sort of maternal thing going on. So Christianity, it sort of morphed, it joined with the culture. So, and I think the same thing happened with Islam and the Uyghurs and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I would have been curious to know what her opinions of, the treatment of the Uyghurs would be.
I'm sure there would be that nothing's going on.
Yeah.
It's not happening. Interesting, this is getting a little bit into entertainment news, but Scarlett Johansson making comments about Woody Allen today. And she said, and I quote, "How do I feel about Woody Allen? I believe him and I would work with him anytime," end quote. And she's been in I think 3 Woody Allen movies. And Woody Allen was accused of abuse by his stepdaughter. She wrote an op-ed that you can go and see for yourself. And then Woody Allen, if I'm not mistaken, he divorced his wife and married a different stepdaughter.
Okay, so the daughter who accused him, Dylan, right? I think that's
Dylan Farrow.
So, was she a stepdaughter or an adopted daughter? It's irrelevant, but when she was 7 was the first time that she claimed it. But I think that Mia Farrow actually was the first one to tell the story.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Mia Farrow is Woody Allen's ex-wife or ex-lover. I don't know if they're ever married, but ex-wife lover. Then Woody Allen started dating Sun Yan?
Asian woman.
Yes, who was the adopted daughter of. So Woody Allen and Mia Farrow split, and then she married another guy, and they adopted. I think Sun Yan. I think that's.
Is that how it happened?
Yeah, so they adopted this girl, and then I think when she was about 21 was when Mia Farrow found out that Woody and her were having relations. And so it was like maybe a year, a few months, six months to a year, whatever it was, that Dylan came forward and said that he had, well, I think Mia told the story first. And, but basically that he had, sexually abused her.
And I remember reading the op-ed that the daughter that Dylan had wrote.
Yeah.
And it is so oddly specific that like the moment I read it, I knew it was true. I was like, oh God, it's so fucking creepy.
Well, it's different. I don't know, because from what I understand, her story was different than what she said when she was 7. But see, the allegations came forward like after Mia Farrow found out about his relationship with her other adopted daughter.
And her brother, I believe Ronan Farrow, is the guy who pretty much sparked the whole Me Too movement.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So I don't know if he went on trial in Connecticut or if he was, I don't recall, but Connecticut basically found him in a sense.
There wasn't enough evidence.
Yeah. Then New York, Child Protective Services, I think, investigated him and said that there was no evidence of what she said had happened. So you're sort of in this limbo of, I mean, was she a 7-year-old girl who was used by him, or was she a 7-year-old girl who was used by her mother to retaliate against him sleeping with her other adopted daughter, and now her memories are, true to her. Who knows? That's I think that's because there are other people who have stuck with him.
Well, my man, the plot thickens. And if you go to my Twitter account, it's Jack Murphy RGR. I posted a picture up on there like an hour ago. And take a look at that, Dave. Tell me what you see. That's our buddy Woody with Jeffrey Epstein.
And how many times did he go to Lolita Island?
I don't know that Woody ever went to Lolita.
See,
not to my knowledge.
I can't look. I can't. It's one thing if people are flying down to Lolita Island. It's another thing if people are rubbing elbows with a billionaire in a very exclusive circle in New York. I mean, they're bound. You know what I mean? It's one of those things that like.
Well, not everyone who shook the guy's hand was involved in illegal activity.
Sure,
without a doubt. But birds of a feather.
I mean, sure, but birds of a feather, you know, pedos, or birds of a feather, really wealthy elite people who don't want to be bothered by it, like that.
But the Venn diagram overlaps at a certain point.
I get it. I get it. But I mean, I imagine that if you went through every photo of Epstein in every social setting he was in, that he probably would have had a picture with, it's like Weinstein, right? I mean, he would have had a picture with everybody at one point in time or another. So it's just
very prominent public figures.
It's very hard. Like it's just very hard to like look at something like that and go, well, they're in a picture together.
I would agree with you, except that we have all these specific allegations against Woody Allen, and then we have him hanging out with Epstein, and it gets to the point where, like I said, the Venn diagrams start to overlap with one another.
Again, I believe with the New York elite, they all hang out. Money is access, and they all go to the same restaurants. Right.
They all go to the same cocktail parties.
Right. They all go to the same places. So, I mean, is that damning? I don't know. So
it's damning, but it doesn't mean he's guilty. I'll put it that way.
So,
it's not. It won't convict anyone in a court of law.
Yeah. I mean, that would be like if some guy on your old team, did something heinous, and then people are like, oh, pulling up pictures of you and he,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, well, yeah, I worked with the guy, whatever. Yeah, we were buddies. I didn't know he did this shit, but you know what I mean? So I don't know. There's only two people in the world who know.
Yeah, unfortunately, and a 7-year-old isn't necessarily equipped to go to NYPD and.
No, I understand that. I'm not. If it's true, and in the cases, all over the world where it is true, it's a horrendous thing. It's just one of those. And I think that for the people who are standing by Woody, I mean, Scarlett Johansson is definitely in his corner. Where she says, "Look, I've talked to him. I've been very direct with him. All these things, and
She also stands to materially benefit from that relationship too.
I mean, yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe she does, but it could also really hurt her.
It could.
So I don't know that you can say that, Woody Allen, how old is Woody Allen now?
I don't know, 70?
So he's got 20, 30 years left. I mean, maybe 10 or, I don't know that's, maybe she's thinking that he'll put her in his next movie. But for every movie he does, with her, because she supports him, maybe there's 5 she doesn't get because she supports him, I don't know. I don't know,
man. I mean, I remember, I was woke before woke was a thing, apparently, because I remember people laughing at me when I said I wouldn't see a Roman Polanski movie. I was like, I don't want to see that. And people laughed at me. And I was like, dude, you know what he did, right? And you can go and read the deposition of what he did. I'm not going to detail it here with my kid in the room, but I mean, you can go and Google that and read it for yourself.
Yeah. Well, look, 100%. I'm not denying that, but I also, how many people worked? I mean, 100%. I get that. I'm just saying here, I think that. Javier Bardem is another person who says he'd work with him at the drop of a hat. That he doesn't know what happened, but if 2 states said there wasn't evidence to convict, then that's what he's going to go with unless something changes. So, I don't know. It's tough.
I don't know, man. I mean. There's, again, like we were talking about, a bad vein of unethical behavior in SOCOM. There is a bad vein in Hollywood
Right.
You know?
But there's a bad vein of unethical behavior everywhere. And the thing
Of
is,
course. I'm not trying to paint with a broad brush and say everyone in Hollywood is involved in this kind of nonsense.
Right.
But I'm saying there's a problem.
there's a problem.
I was watching with my kid. We threw on.
Damn it.
We were through on The Never-Ending Story 2. And I was like, I haven't seen this movie since I was like your age. Let's watch this movie. I put it on. The very first scene in the movie is a crotch shot on a 10-year-old boy as he jumps into the swimming pool. Like, you're looking right at his crotch as he jumps into the pool. I'm like, who the fuck directed this movie? And I went and did a little bit of research. That actor committed suicide when he was like 23 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
There's a problem.
Oh.
There's a problem.
I 100% agree there's a problem. 100% agree. You know? Yeah. The thing is that it's just like if we heard that a special operations soldier had done something, do we automatically assume his guilt because of what others, you know, a small minority, but what others have done in the community? Yeah. You know, well, this is just par for the course.
And you also, I mean, there are some like delineations, like you have to be clear, like if there's a certain number of credible accusations against somebody, the person hasn't been convicted in a court, but me personally, I'm going to make the ethical decision not to work with that person. But at the same time, as we're having this conversation, we have to be clear that just because an accusation has been made does not mean the person is guilty.
I also think that in this day and age, we really have to question what a credible accusation is. You know what I mean?
I'm glad you asked that, because for me, it begins with the 5 W's. The where, when, what, why, who. When you have the 5 W's, then you have the basis to begin asking more questions, and there's something there to begin digging into. If a person can't give you the 5 W's, then to me, it's something that you have to be incredibly skeptical of. And like I've talked to you, you know, off camera about stories I've worked on or I'm working on where I don't have the 5 W's, or I have the 5 W's, but they're not all double sourced.
Right.
So I haven't written the story.
Right.
Because I'm missing information.
Right.
Right. So that's kind of the threshold for me as a person.
Right. Well, and then the question also becomes
and I'll just add, random accusations from random people, unnamed people on Twitter does not constitute a credible accusation.
Yeah, there is that. Well, you're aware that I can't remember his name, Alex, he's a game designer.
Okay.
And he was just recently I don't think he was actually Me Too'd. I think that it was sort of after now this is years and years ago that all this allegedly happened. I don't want to name names. It's easy enough to find out. But the woman who made the accusations, it's not her first time, and she's been sort of in there in like the gaming industry, you know. She has a reputation of.
She's made some questionable accusations in the past.
Yes. And so I don't believe that her accusations were actually against him, but her accusations against him were that how poorly he handled her experience. And then again, this is like over a decade old. That she's saying it happened. You know, this is what happened 10 or 15 years ago, or whatever it was. And then, as Twitter does, there was a massive pile-on on this guy. He lost his project. His company fired him, and then he ended himself.
I saw this. Yeah, he committed suicide,
Mm-hmm.
and he had a history of like some ups and downs in life, and I believe talked about how he had these like very depressed moments in life.
Now he didn't even get Me Too'd. He got you weren't supportive enough. I'm not 100%. I didn't.
So there wasn't even an accusation of
I don't
abuse.
believe so. I believe it was more, he could have done better at being supportive. I believe. And if I'm wrong, feel free to correct me, because
That's brutal.
I do my best to avoid Twitter, to avoid, that type of stuff, because it's just, I don't know, it just gets very toxic after a while when it, but, so, I don't know, Scarlett Johansson.
I was having a conversation with a friend of mine today, actually, and he was saying, he's like, man, the only people who've really been like hard canceled are like Harvey Weinstein, like people who really had it coming. I was like, man, I kind of disagree with you. Like,
No.
there are a lot of people who've lost work,
got canceled.
and he's like, what happens when they come after you is, so you get canceled by the left, but the right will hire you. And I was like, bro, it's not quite that simple. Like,
No.
it doesn't really work like that.
No. And the thing is because, like, 99% of people who have gotten canceled are just average Joes who have no recourse, and there is no left or right in their life. There's only their job that they left, or that they lost.
Not everyone is like a branded individual, like,
Right.
Rush Limbaugh or Bill O'Reilly or somebody. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, speaking of Scarlett Johansson, comic book news, she has the Black Widow prologue coming out.
Movie coming out.
Yes.
This year, right?
I'm not sure.
Or is it next year? Is it 2020?
I think it's 2020. Should be interesting though, because I know that the woman who is writing it has made some statements regarding, wanting to see less guns in the Marvel universe and less violence and.
So this is something that John Robb commented on, that we're having these like moral purity tests, and he's theorized that the next step is going to be that cancel culture is going to turn to gun owners. So it's going to be like, if you own a gun, you can't be on the PTA, you can't coach kids little league. Like, they're going to start forcing people who own guns as a form of like moral purity, that you're not aligned with us, and they're going to start like casting you out of the clique.
See, here's the thing. I believe that would be. I believe that would be a possibility. However, cancel culture doesn't really exist in
in the
real world. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't really exist outside of like Twitter or whatever. Like
you can come after like a fucking Z-list internet famous guy like myself, but yeah, the average guy who's like an insurance salesman isn't even on Twitter.
And the PTA board members around him aren't on Twitter. You know what I mean? Is like, I don't.
That might change though, generationally speaking.
I think Twitter usage is going down.
Yeah, but I mean,
at least in America. I don't know about internationally, but at least in America, and.
But if you're younger than I am and you're not on social media, it's like you look at that person like, what are you, a North Korean spy? Like, what are you?
Well, that's true. But I also think that not millennials. Millennials got they got a bum rap. I mean, I can't imagine what it would have been like to grow up like with every single adolescent mistake.
Every K-sand is on Snapchat.
Yeah. It's all there forever. I remember there was a girl who, this was a couple of years ago, I think it was by the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier or something.
I know what you're talking about.
She took a provocative picture, a dumb picture, a stupid kid picture. The girl was like 16 years old.
It wasn't like she was like dry humping the guard or something. It was just like there's a sign that said like be quiet and respectful.
And she's like pretending to yell.
Yeah, she took a picture like pretending to yell.
And like she got hammered. And the thing is that like that's not indicative of how she necessarily feels about, dead soldiers.
Yeah.
She was just being a dumb kid. Dumb kids do dumb things, and we're all dumb kids.
And it's not like she went up to the tomb guard and slapped him in the face and knocked his head off.
Yeah. So it's like, but so millennials have a bum rap in the sense that, all of a sudden, every ounce of their life was on display. They didn't know how to deal with it. because nobody had ever had to deal with it before. You know what I mean? Then we get these Pavlovian responses, you know, the like button, which is like the bane of civilization. You know, like, I mean, you know, and so millennials, you know, look, they're fucked up, but they're no more fucked up than Gen Xers, you know, the lost generation. I mean, it was our sort of ambivalence and ennui, I guess, that, you know, it made them so passionate about, I mean, maybe not necessarily the right thing.
Well, that you guys were a bunch of beatniks and were too cool for school, so.
No, just, I mean, the cancel culture and the purity test, I feel, are all, you know, so.
But they feel society has failed morally.
But so did the right when I was growing up, you know, and then you had Gen X who just, we're not in the left, we're not in the right, you know, like, it's just like whatever. I mean, and if you look at our politicians, you know, Bush and Clinton's and even Obama to a degree, they were all very milquetoast. You know what I mean? They were all very like middle of the road, kind of milquetoasty. And so, you know, every generation is going to rebel against their parents, you know, against the generation before. And so instead of the religious right, you know, administering the purity test, now it's the religious left, you know, or the irreligious left, or whatever it is, you know.
My one of my favorites, one of my favorite purity test memes was the you remember "My culture is not your prom dress." It was a girl that went to the prom wearing a traditional Chinese dress. It was traditional in a certain era in like Shanghai in the 1930s. And she posted a picture of it, and then like somebody retweeted it and said, "My culture is not your prom dress." And it was, you know, somebody in the Chinese diaspora in America.
Right.
And Chinese people, like people in China, literally did not give a shit.
Yeah.
But on the Twitter world, like,
well, it was the same when they pulled the Native American tribes about the Washington Redskins. They're like, whatever. You know, most of them are like, whatever.
But I'll tell you, from now on, whenever I'm on the subway and I see some kid wearing like, you know, military fatigues, I take my shoe and I just throw it at him. I'm like, my culture is not your fucking attire.
I didn't dodge it. I remember when Bush dodged.
Yeah, you have to be like Dodge Bush.
Yeah.
Dodge Bush. You have to be like George Bush dodging the shoe. Yeah. Because I'm coming after you. Well, you're wearing a fatigue jacket on the subway. I'm coming for you, man.
It's the whole cultural appropriation thing. It's funny. I mean, would we then by that yardstick say, well, only minors can wear blue jeans?
It's the whole thing.
Like only minors can wear denim because, you know, Levi Strauss, you know, denim, you know, they created like the whole jean, you know, as something that minors can wear.
That's class appropriation. Class appropriation.
So only minors or only Americans can wear. I mean, it's all
weird, especially in this country where like we're such a hodgepodge of everything.
See, that's what's so weird is that like when I was growing up, the whole thing was America is a melting pot. I mean, you heard that all the time. America is a melting pot. The idea that, did you ever see Bulworth?
That was many years ago.
Okay, so Bulworth is a movie about a politician. It's got Warren Beatty and Halle Berry in it, and it's fun. And I mean, he basically kind of has, I think, a nervous breakdown. This politician and just starts speaking the truth as he sees it, and he starts talking about America, the melting pot, and basically says, you know, we just all need to keep. I won't use his language
because YouTube will shut us down.
Because YouTube will shut us down. We all just need to keep, you know, humping until there is no color, you know, and that in a large part was sort of, you know, the idea is melting pot, that we all just came together and, you know, all the different flavors blended and formed this delicious soup, you know, in this capable country and blah, blah, blah. And now we are so caught up in identity politics that, I mean,
And it's impossible to separate all of these things. Like, I mean, everything from jazz to techno music came from outside of America.
Oh, right.
You know, I mean, how do you begin to, this type of person can do this and this
Well,
person?
like Tejano music, right? Tejano music down around, Texas. That's
I'm sorry. Jazz actually is an American thing, but I believe it originated with the African American community. So maybe.
Well, Tejano music is a blending of German music or Polish. I think German music because of all the German immigrants that went to Texas and Mexican music. So you have this. This vibrant Tejano music with, like the accordion and stuff like that, which came from Germany, and it's like, well, where do you pull it all apart, you know? And the other question is, why do you want to pull it apart? Because it's like pulling it apart is what
Yeah, you're
what sets us at odds, So anyway, where did that come from? What was
Scarlett Johansson.
Oh yeah.
Thanks, Scarlett.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Well, she's already on the outs with the left for her. I'm an actor and I'll play, whatever. I'll play whatever role.
Yeah, that's a whole separate rant. I don't know if I'm ready for that, Dave.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Ghost in the Shell fan.
Mm-hmm.
The original Japanese film is probably my favorite movie, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And I have not seen the Scarlett Johansson remake.
Oh, but that wasn't even what the uproar was about. The uproar was about her playing a trans, I think a trans woman.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. That was it.
I think that Scarlett would be a pretty terrible trans woman. She just, I don't see her pulling it off. Don't see it. That's my appropriation comment for the stream. Sorry.
Anyway,
it's like oh geez, what's the actor's name who forget it. I'm losing my train of thought. Sorry, it's a long day. So the last thing I wanted to bring up, unless you have anything else you want to throw out, was the Treasury Department designating a vast illicit network as a terrorist proxy being run by the IRGC, the Iranian Republic Guard, specifically Quds Force, and is a massive, essentially oil smuggling network that sprawls across the Middle East and South Asia and elsewhere, funneling money to Hezbollah, the Assad regime in Syria, other illicit actors. And so they drop the hammer on the network, putting all kinds of sanctions on them. And I think it's interesting in a couple of different respects. One of the things that I think is interesting is that the IRGC or Quds Force, unlike their, what I'm getting at.
What is the IRGC?
The Iranian Republic Guard is special forces, special operations, if you will, unit. And Quds Force is like the more unconventional warfare wing, proxy warfare wing of the IRGC. And a lot of times what we like to do as Americans is make comparisons. So what we do is we say the Russian FSB or SVR is like the Russian CIA. Or we say, China's MSS is like a combination of America's CIA and FBI. Those comparisons are bullshit. They're absolute bullshit. You can't even begin to compare them because our CIA and FBI are institutions that are accountable to Congress. They get called to the carpet when they screw up.
They have very, very clear operating titles and
title
authorities and what they can and cannot do.
If the FBI wants to wiretap somebody, they have to go to a court and a judge has to stamp the FISA warrant. There are all sorts of restrictions on them. And one thing that the CIA and the FBI cannot do, which an organization like the IRGC does all the time, is run entrepreneurial operations for profit. There are some exceptions, I guess you could say, like non-official cover. People might have to self-fund or set up platforms to run operations overseas, but they can't personally enrich themselves, or they can't turn it into, let's say, a CIA slush fund.
Right.
That's super illegal. But the IRGC can do that. Quds Force can do that. The FSB can run for-profit operations. So the comparisons are pretty ridiculous when we try to say these things. And I understand why the newspapers feel like they need to tell Americans oh, this is their answer to the CIA. This is their answer to the Navy SEALs.
Well, it's a reference point. I mean, it's a
reference point.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, you're dumbing down the information to the point that there's no real comparison.
Right.
So I thought it was interesting that the Treasury Department dropping the hammer on this network. Says here, senior IRGC QF official and former Iranian Minister of Petroleum, Rostam Qasimi, oversees this sprawling network, which features dozens of ship managers, vessels, and facilitators. This complex network of intermediaries enables the IRGC QF to obfuscate, check my pronunciation, its involvement in selling Iranian oil. The IRGC QF also relies heavily on Hezbollah officials and front companies to broker associated contracts. OFAC is also issuing a new shipping advisory to the maritime community, warning that these types of schemes and the sanction risks associated with blocked persons. So they're sanctioning the network, but also people involved.
Right. Well, I mean, how do you sanction a criminal network? I mean, you have to hit them where you can.
And I'm going to post the link here into the comments so you guys can check that Treasury Department guidance for yourself. And actually, I'll post the other stuff too in the links, so you guys can take a look at that if you want. But I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on all that, Dave? The sanctioning of the IRGC?
Not really. No, I mean it's it's really going to come down to enforcement, right? And what is the United States going to do? What are they going to commit to enforcement? Because you can't really sanction the IRGC because they're already sanctioned. And it's like trying to sanction the mafia. Like what are you going to do? So what you have to do is you have to shut down their restaurants. Yeah, you have to shut down their restaurants and their garbage trucks. You know what I mean? Like you have to try to hit everything that's supporting them. They're supporting, and that's dumb. What I just said is really dumb. It's not like the restaurants are supporting them. But what I'm saying is you have to hit the peripheral things. Because you really can't get a strike. I mean, the RICO Act was created because they couldn't go after mobsters for being mobsters, so they had to get them on the RICO Act, right?
Yeah.
Tax evasion.
Mm-hmm.
So it's they have to find these out of the box, creative ways of putting the kibosh on an organization that's operating outside the bounds of the law anyway.
Yeah. When we're bound by laws, and they're basically not.
Right.
I have a friend who worked in financial intelligence. Maybe he still does. And he had a lot of interesting stories about, banks and stuff would hire him to go in and figure out which are the illicit networks. Because the banks want to protect themselves. The last thing they want is the FBI knocking on their door like, hey, you got to pay $250 million in fees because you just broke the law, unknowingly doing business with an illicit network. So they'd hire him and come in and identify these are the players, these are the actors you don't want to be doing business with. And he was telling me, he's like, I could go in and do it very quick because he did this with the military previously. And he's like, I'd go into the ledgers and I would see 5 Iranian companies, but they're all they all have the same mailing address, like Dubai or Qatar or something like that. Like, this is bullshit. So he's like, I could do it. I could go down it in a day. And what happened was the third party he was working for got mad at him because they were like, well, now, you work so fast, what you're doing is you're cutting down on the client engagement hours.
Right.
So now we're losing money.
So there's billable hours thereafter, yeah.
The billable hours. And he was very, I don't think I could ever get him to talk about it publicly, but he was kind of upset with how all of that works. It's just another case where it's like American national security. We make this shit so hard on ourselves. It's ridiculous.
We always have. I mean, we really have. I mean, I don't know if we always have. I mean, look, I don't think anybody can doubt the OSS and their, efficacy, but look what happened as soon as Carter took office.
On the church committee hearings.
Yeah.
Those were different days. I mean, the OSS, we did business with like Lucky Luciano and, mafia affiliated people. Before the church committee, it was just a different world.
Yeah. Well, because the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right?
And then Iran-Contra in the 80s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All that stuff. And people don't understand that. Like, I was reading an article in the New Yorker magazine this last week, and it's a critique of espionage and specifically the CIA and questioning whether or not these spies are more trouble than they're worth. And I went and I read the article, and like the bulk of the article is about MK Ultra and some similar programs from like way back. MK Ultra was like in the 50s and 60s. It was the CIA messing around with LSD. They were fascinated with the idea of mind control. Yeah,
they were working with hypnotists to try to condition human beings.
But that was 50, 60 years ago. Today's CIA has like no resemblance really to that organization back in those days because of the Church Committee and the Trilateral Commission and all these, or the Trilateral Commission, the Iran-Contra Commission. And I mean, the agency has gotten their pee-pee slapped so hard over the years that now they're a very risk-averse organization.
Oh, 100%. Well, and you have to think about that all those people who were like born of the fire, huh?
James Jesus Angleton.
I don't know.
He was like the head of CIA counterintelligence, like in the old days.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I mean, look, those guys. Look, when you look at the OSS and what they were doing, when they're parachuting behind enemy lines in 2-3-man teams with no resources, and we're talking about real enemy lines. Like in modern warfare, like we haven't seen enemy lines since
like that.
Yeah, I mean the Korean War, probably. But deep into hostile territory where everybody was their enemy. Or anybody could potentially be their enemy, and making these partisan link-ups and sending back communications on these massive radios, intelligence and whatnot, and then these people roll over to the CIA and they're still these unorthodox guerrilla fighters. So they decide to try to kill Castro with a poison cigar,
And they also had just essentially helped save the world from Nazism.
Correct.
And then they come home from the war, and now they see the rising specter of communism.
Right.
And they're like, well, the communists are just as bad, if not a little worse than the Nazis. And if we let the communists win, it means everything we did during the war was for nothing.
Right. And it's funny because we're often, I mean, it's easy to look back on Vietnam and go, well, why were we there, blah blah blah, the domino theory. But really, the domino theory, it happened. I mean, once Vietnam,
after we left,
like it actually it happened. Like I'm not sure that Vietnam was as much of a mistake. I mean, it's always hard to say. Obviously we went in because the French. We went in, I think, for a number of reasons, right? I mean, when people vote to go to war, you don't have, all of Congress sitting there. Well, and I mean, they never go to Vietnam. It was police action, right? But everybody's got their own reason for approving something like that, or for whatever else. So, the domino theory, the pressure from the French, like, hey, we need help because we just had our, asses handed to us. The Koreans were there with their reasons, the Rock Marines and them. So it's like, was it wrong to go? I don't know. Did we conduct the war poorly?
Yeah.
100%,
Yeah, I mean, I think the question is, how many Americans died in Vietnam? Like 53,000?
Yeah, like close to 60,000, yeah.
I mean, was the juice worth the squeeze? I mean, we sacrificed the best of that generation of
right.
men in Southeast Asia, and we, in the process, did some things that were pretty reprehensible, in my opinion, dumping Agent Orange on that country.
Right.
The strategic bombing of Laos and Cambodia. We just did the body counts, that we had all these commanders who thought they wanted their body counts, as if that was going to win the war.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of bad things that happened.
No, it was. I mean, it's like, I mean, you guys are gonna have to forgive me. I'm an old, aged soldier and sailor. So when my mind creates analogies or whatever metaphors, it's sort of.
It's like when the quarterback is.
Yeah, no. So just please forgive me. But basically, oh, I can't. I forgot your daughter's in the room. I can't even say that. I was gonna say it's the difference between going to a club and paying $300 throughout the course of the night and not achieving an end goal, and paying $300 to visit a person of ill repute and achieving your goal, right? So like in prior wars, it was we know what the goal is, we know what the price may be, but we know we're going in willing to pay that price for this end goal. And then we go into Korea, and Vietnam particularly, and then we saw it reflected in, I think, in Iraq and Afghanistan, in that we're going in, we don't know what the goal is.
Yeah.
And we're gonna keep on paying all night long.
And that was the Powell Doctrine, right? Coming out of Vietnam, the Powell Doctrine, it included, what's the withdrawal strategy? How do we get out of the war?
Right. Well, I mean, and not only how do you get out, but how do you know you've won? Like, at what point do you declare victory? We have to know that. Like, if you've ever done any sort of goal-setting session, you sit down there, and it's just like it's basically just like doing a mission briefing plan or whatever. Like, all right, at this time we're going to hit this target, and this is what we're going to accomplish, and then we back plan it from there.
I think part of it also is that since World War II, America has been the predominant global power, and so winning for us is maintaining global order. And that's why we have soldiers just stationed all over. We're in 120 or 160 countries a year.
I don't know.
So it's basically winning for us is maintaining the status quo.
Yeah.
So I think that's a large part of what changes it.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not a politician. I'm not faced with the decisions they are. And also, unfortunately, now we're going to have, we have Crenshaw and
Your girl.
You have Tulsi Gabbard, you have, I think we're going to see more and more veterans, especially combat veterans.
Amy Duckworth.
Yeah, we're going to see more and more veterans, and more particularly combat veterans, enter into politics. And look, I mean, love her or hate her, it doesn't matter. But Tulsi Gabbard has a very real message about war. It's like. Yeah. I was combat medic. Like I saw what happened. I saw what the cost was. So I want to make sure that whatever we get involved with in the future is worth that cost.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes, and I don't want to put soldiers or veterans up on a pedestal, right? I don't think that it's one of those things where I don't think that people who weren't there don't get an opinion, right? Because you could survey 100 different soldiers and get 100 different opinions. Like there's no unified, this is what it is and this is what it's worth and blah, blah, blah. But I will say that I think that today's politicians, there's a very real disconnect between, and maybe it's always been the case. Probably not in World War II because everybody had to go. Politicians had to send their sons, and you know what I mean. So and their daughters had to go to war. So there was a cost. But when was the last time a politician's son was forced to go to war, or daughter forced to go to war? It doesn't happen anymore. I mean, honestly. If we reinstated a draft, at least a wartime draft, people would think twice.
Yeah, no, it reminds me of what a former colleague of mine, he went and worked at Special Operations Central Command at MacDill, and he described the people working there. He's like, you know what, this war's never going to end. So like they come into work at 07, they do PT, they go work in the office until 1700, then they get in their BMWs and drive home.
Yeah, there is no war.
He was like, imagine if they were all in the field.
Yeah.
Like in World War II, where like Patton was in the field.
Right.
And he was there as long as the war was going on.
Right.
Today it's different.
Well, how many generals are there now compared to how many during World War II? Like,
It's crazy.
we are so
Generals and admirals.
we are so officer, like top brass heavy now.
And command sergeant majors.
Yeah.
It's out of control.
And they all have to justify their job somehow. They all have to.
By getting their 2 cents in.
Yeah.
Guys, if you have any questions, shoot them in. We'll probably wrap this thing up in 5-10 minutes. I just wanted to put out like the PSA, like the PBS fundraiser message.
Oh yeah, right.
Is that, we are building this thing. Like I said, we're building an aircraft in flight. If you guys want to support us, if you like what we're doing, the direction we're going in, I just threw the link in the comments for our Patreon site, and you go in, you chip in $1 a month or as much as you want, really.
Yeah.
So every little bit helps, and it helps us upgrade the studio, and it increases the quality and the amount of things that we'll be able to do in the stream.
Yeah.
So-
and then what we've done so far, has come from our pockets. Predominantly, I have to say Jack's pocket. But the thing is that we have 4 cameras in here now, right? And those are almost $2,000 each. We've got this nice, amazing table that Jack built with his own 2 hands.
And the scaffolding you and I built.
So we've got the TriCaster. Like, we're committed, and we want to provide you guys with, hopefully,
And provide a platform
yeah,
for other people to come on here.
100%.
And I mean, we're going to have all kinds of different guests on here talking about all sorts of interesting topics that you're just not going to hear anywhere else.
Right.
Like I have somebody lined up who's going to come in and talk about paramilitaries down in Colombia. She'll also be able to speak about her work documenting voodoo in Haiti. Like just very interesting topics that you're just not really going to hear elsewhere.
I can't wait to hear that. I actually forgot to do my intro. So the reason I thought of my intro was because we just want to say that because of our backgrounds, Jack Wood is former Army Ranger, former Special Forces, obviously journalist, reporter all over the world. I am a former Navy diver, former Army Ranger, former paramilitary contractor, now I'm an actor. Go figure. But we hope to bring some, I don't know, maybe some unique insight into some of these issues. Something that you won't hear anywhere else. So anyway, thanks for joining us, or thanks for watching this afterwards. We really do appreciate it. I mean, it means a lot to us.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where we're going to make the money, make our money, so to speak, for the viewers, is bringing on unique guests that you're not going to get
100%.
elsewhere. And then elsewhere, hopefully some unique perspectives on the news and current goings on. I'm also planning to do like maybe some deep dives on military history stuff, like obscure special forces history stuff that I've covered. So I'll have to plot that out.
Yeah.
I'm not as good as Dan Carlin, the hardcore history guy, but I'll work on it.
Yeah. And then I thought there was one other thing. Oh, please subscribe if you haven't subscribed already.
Yes.
Also, hit that little bell so you get a notification. You guys are probably already aware of this, but YouTube is basically
A giant algorithm.
Yeah, YouTube is basically bending the knee, as it were, to corporate media, and so the people that they're promoting is going to be Fox, CNN, MSNBC. So a lot of times we won't come up in your feed at all. So you have to hit that little bell so that you're notified when we have a show. And as you can tell right now, we are disorganized. We don't have a set schedule yet because, we're both, our lives are a little bit in flux while we, we figure all this out, and.
Yeah, I mean, I think we want to eventually set a schedule when it's like a TV show, like, we're going to be on, Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m. or whatever it is.
Yeah, and if you're at all interested in geek culture, because that's one of the things that Jack and I also share is, a love of nerddom. Whether it's comics, role-playing games, and we will try and get, guests on that part of the show too.
Yeah, I like
that are, that are specific to that. Also, we may, I don't know, possibly live broadcast from Comic-Con. Comic-Con's coming up, New York Comic-Con, October 3rd to October 6th. So I know I will be there.
This is borderline embarrassing. There's actually a convention going on in Connecticut that I think I'm going to take my daughter to. And this is I feel like, oh man, it's like such a middle-aged dad thing to do, and I'm only 36. It's for like people who make like military models, people who do tanks and helicopters and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, are you sure you want to go with me? Do you really want to go with me and see all this stuff? She's like, yeah. Like, okay, all right.
She's ride or die.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I mean, when she yells out "damn" because she's playing a video game, you can tell who the military kids are.
When she told me today that we need a Justice League to go beat up the bad guys, and I was like, "There's no Justice League in real life, I'm afraid." And she's like, "Yeah, we do. It's called the Army." And I was like, Alice is going to be lonely, a lonely New York City kid when she's only a young Republican in her school.
Well, and these days it's not even really about being a Democrat or Republican. It's like it doesn't matter whose side you're on. Like if you don't march lockstep, then I don't consider myself a Republican even, but people will label you the way they want to label you at any given moment. I mean, and a lot of people who are on the right call me a libtard. I mean, it is what it is. It is what it is. The thing is it's all group thing. I think there was a time, maybe I'm wrong, and again, if you look back to yellow journalism and some of the stuff that early politicians did in the 1700s to each other.
Oh yeah.
They weren't very kind.
The era of machine politics.
Yeah. Not 1700s, but 1800s. They weren't very kind either. But I think that maybe there was a time when people were a little bit more skeptical of their government, that it didn't matter if the person was on your side or not, that if there was an allegation or even an act of impropriety that people might go, is that true?
Well, even other parts of the world, people take politics with multiple large grains of salt.
Yeah.
But in America, we are still so naive. Every candidate that comes by, we think they're the messiah. They can solve all our problems.
Yeah. I'd like to think that it hasn't always been like that. But, when I look back through my lifetime, I think that it probably has,
Definitely an aspect of it. And every politician wants that status, right? The messianic status.
Yeah.
There's that bright light behind their head.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I don't really, I don't remember Ford. I don't remember Carter. I remember them being in office, but I didn't know anything about what they were doing. I was too young. And I remember Reagan, and, Reagan was a very well-liked president, by, both the left and the right a lot of times. But I was in high school, so I was still too young to really know what he was actually doing or even care, to be honest with you.
I remember HW, but I was very young.
Yeah.
So I remember the Gulf War.
Yeah. Yeah, there were a lot of people in the Gulf War that thought we should have gone all the way into Iraq. But I think that back then they recognized that if we topple Saddam, what's the answer to that? When did Tito, when did Yugoslavia break apart?
Oh, sure.
Because I think that was part of it, was that Like,
that was after World War II. It was, you know.
yeah, but see, I think that was still not fresh, but still in the memory, in sort of the
And a very nostalgic time for people who live in former Yugoslavia,
right,
in Croatia, Serbia.
right. Well, I mean, I think that the politicians in the 70s and 80s, there was still that institutional memory of this is what happens when you get a power vacuum. No matter how horrible that human being is, there's order, right? And so this goes back to ethics. What do? You
have to balance morality and pragmatism.
And pragmatism. And I think that for a long time, well, first off, for a long time we supported Saddam because he was the bulwark against Iran.
Yeah.
We would supply them weapons and everything else. And then at a certain point in time, we forgot. I don't know that, we went in there and people can say Bush, but look, I mean, there were a whole lot of Democrats that voted for that war. Like that wasn't something that just barely squeaked by. And now, now people are trying, to like change it. Oh, well, we were lied to about yellow cake. But at the end of the day, I think they saw the same intel that Bush saw. Like, I think everybody acted on the information that they thought was correct, but...
Well, at the White House level, there's a massaging of the facts with Cheney.
I don't doubt that. I mean, Cheney was something else. Cheney was something else. But here's the thing. I didn't personally know the man. I don't, I can't read his mind. So at the end of the day, like, I have my suspicions, but I can't, I don't know.
Well, we have one question here, and I don't know what the answer is.
Okay. 42.
What do you think about the Georgetown kid that China is holding hostage because his stepdad committed financial crimes there? They're hoping it'll draw the dad back to be tried. I mean, hey man, it's not America. You don't have American rights when you travel abroad. Just keep that in mind. Like, what was it, a couple episodes ago we were talking about people being held in Qatar because they got into debt or whatever, and the families would not let them leave.
Can you elaborate on that quite? Like, what do we think about China holding him? What do you think the Americans should do? Like, what?
I mean, yeah, and it probably also, I have to think, plays into the fact that, like, we arrested that Huawei woman. She's like the vice president of Huawei.
Yeah.
And the Canadians arrested her, and she was extradited to the United States, and we're going to put her on trial for violating sanctions. So the Chinese are going to retaliate, of course, and snatch up a bunch of our people.
Well, and right now, I mean, Huawei is, Huawei is accusing the United States government of espionage and of sending, I think, of coercing their employees.
They accuse us of that.
Yeah.
Huawei I'll hand it to Huawei. They have big balls. They actually filed in the United States saying that because the administration said we're not going to allow Huawei hardware to be installed in American telecom infrastructure, specifically U.S. government infrastructure, Huawei said you're violating our constitutional rights. This is a Chinese company filing in the United States.
Yeah.
We're violating their constitutional rights. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Get the fuck out of here.
Which rights are those? I'm trying to remember. Anybody, I don't know.
Oh,
the idea.
This guy's trying to get me on a rant. What are your thoughts about open source intelligent accounts on Twitter that were based in the US, UK, that were banned by Twitter via request from India and Pakistan for tweeting unfavorable intel? Oh, okay, so this isn't quite the rant. I have a whole thing about these OSINT people on Twitter. They talking like little baby voices all the time. They sound like Joss Whedon characters, and they're like, "I do OSINT, bro." And yeah, it's obnoxious as fuck.
Do they actually talk, or do they just tweet?
No, they just tweet stuff, and they look at photographs, and sometimes they find important things or good information, but a lot of times they're also full of shit. And I mean, I've had those people come to me and say that nothing can be known unless that bad guys talking about terrorists in Syria tweet videos of them doing it. It's like they cannot conceive that any sort of intelligence analysis was ever done before the advent of social media.
Right. But that was Carter's thing, that, the CIA is it's extinct, like it's what am I thinking of? Where it's
Obsolete.
Obsolete. Thank you. The CIA is obsolete. The future is with technology. Build up the NSA to something that's...
Well, SIGINT at that time.
Yeah.
SIGINT is not OSINT, by the way.
No, I know, but what I'm saying is it's sort of the same idea, where
there's no need for human anymore.
Right. In their opinion is there's no need for human anymore, or that it doesn't serve a purpose or whatever else.
I mean, the real purpose that human serves is human tells you where to look. And then you point your sensors, your SIGINT or whatever else you got at electronic intelligence, and you use a secondary source to confirm you're human.
Right.
And now you've double sourced your intel.
Right. Well, I mean, human is vital. I mean, what I mean? It'll always be vital. But going back to this question, whether those guys are bullshit or not, I think this points to a very real problem with social media. That, and I think. So we talked about the millennials a little bit. I'll talk about Gen Z. I think Gen Z. I think that they potentially could save the world. I really do. I think that they've been exposed. Like, they grew up now in the social media era. They've learned a lot, I think, from the millennials' mistakes. And I think that a lot of times their messages stop whining. And so going back, I think we're going to see a vast change in social media soon. I think that social media is going to get hammered.
What do you think about Twitter banning some of these open source intel, quote unquote, accounts because Pakistan or India started complaining about it?
Okay, that's what I'm saying. Is it Twitter is now operating outside of their own mission statement.
Right.
And here's the thing is that, Twitter and Twitter, particularly Twitter, they want to use this public utilities, sort of argument. They want
to say they're a platform.
They want to say they're a platform, right? And the benefit of them saying they're a platform is that they are never liable. They're not liable for what gets published on their platform, right?
But in reality, they're curating content.
So, and that's the thing, is it what they're doing now by selectively choosing who they are banning and why, and especially when they're
or who they verify, who gets a little blue check.
Right. And there's an interesting story right there we'll talk about real quick. So all of a sudden, when they start deciding, when they start deciding that who can speak on their platform and who can't, they're moving from a platform to a curator or to a publisher status, and they may find themselves liable now for what gets put out on their platform. The other thing that's happening is that there's also the public, they're trying to fall under this protection of a public utility. Well, we're just this platform, right? And the thing is that they're basically, you could sort of say that they're like AT&T or Sprint or whatever, okay? Now, AT&T and Sprint, as far as I know, I can't not give somebody a phone line, or they can't cut off their phone because of their political affiliation.
Good point. I've never heard of that before.
Right.
I'm not aware of any cases where they're like, hey, you're a neo-Nazi, I'm not giving you a phone.
Right. So because they're sort of, I think, and if I'm wrong, feel free to correct me, because I'm like, I am an expert on nothing. But this idea that, like AT&T and Sprint, even though they're privately owned companies, they're still utilities, and they still fall under federal regulations. So a lot of times when people on Twitter say you can't do this, freedom of speech, and other people will say it's a private company, you don't have freedom of speech, which would be true. Like, you don't have freedom of speech at your job. You have to obey whatever laws there are or rules are. Thing is, though, is that if you're a public utility and you fall under like the FCC, or if you fall under government regulation, that you don't get, like, you don't get to pick and choose.
Right.
And so Twitter is trying to play both sides right now. And Facebook is doing the same. There was recently a con down, was it in Tennessee? I don't remember, but it was called Bubba Fest, right? And it was a con, but it was a con celebrating Southern culture. Okay? And a con is a convention. It's sort of a geekdom or whatever. But they had like Chuck Norris was there, a couple professional wrestlers.
So they're going to have like pulled pork sandwiches and
absolutely 100%. There was also and there were, who else was there? There were like a couple black celebrities. Like it was just a Southern thing.
They have a Confederate flag somewhere though.
No, what happened was this guy was advertised. The guy who put it together was advertised on Facebook, and Facebook like. In one day or 2 days or whatever, because dropped his advertising budget, the amount he was allowed to spend on ads. Now, Facebook is a for-profit company.
Right.
And they denied him the ability to spend money on their platform. They dropped his his max advertising budget from like whatever it was, 10,000, whatever he was spending, down to 1,500. And when he asked them why, they said, well, this Bubba Fest, is promoting like white supremacy or whatever it was. They said, however they spent it, like alt-right or whatever. It's like, it has nothing to do like that. We have people from all over the South, coming to this thing. And they said, well, you have Chuck Norris and you have,
that's the barometer, you got Chuck Norris?
Because he's a conservative. And like, we have some very conservative guests coming.
They actually said that to them?
Yes. That was their thing. So I think these, they're going to run into a brick wall soon. I think they're going to run into a brick wall. Like if you start picking and choosing who can speak on your platform, you're going to lose. I mean, especially when you consider look. If Pakistan, because this isn't the first time that Pakistan or India have influenced Twitter. There have been other things. And the thing is it, for when Twitter was first starting, there was a lot of international breaking news that would happen on Twitter because some person, some kid, somebody in the street would have their cell phone out.
That was the first place that the Bin Laden raid was reported. It was like some guy like, there's helicopters over my neighborhood in Nevada.
Right?
What the fuck?
Yeah. and so if all of a sudden Pakistan and India or China,
it's a way of social.
Yeah. If they can tell Twitter, don't do this.
An American company,
don't do this. This is improper. Then all of a sudden, like what Twitter was known for, what it was, what made it great when it was
sharing information.
Sharing information goes away, and it just becomes another mouthpiece of whatever government is, But YouTube's doing it too. YouTube just banned. Was it like 10,000 channels?
Really?
Yeah, they just like people woke up. People with followings of tens or hundreds of thousands of people woke up one day and had no YouTube channel because YouTube had decided that their channel promoted hate.
It's crazy, man, because it's like, it's also tenuous. Like what we're doing here is, we'd like to eventually create this into like some sort of business, right?
Sure.
Let's say we're successful in that endeavor. We build a business based around YouTube and maybe a few other sites, Patreon, other websites that, help you build up a business like this. And then they can just, like, it could be just like some kid, some 20-year-old in an office decides like, Jack Murphy's spreading hate today.
Yeah.
And just shut it on out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it creates, what's like the term that like stock market people would use? It's like a very, tenuous, skittish markets. The markets are skittish.
Well, and now you're seeing competitors. You're seeing like Minds, which we need to check out. You're seeing the, is it the federated?
I saw people talking about MeWe or something like that. It's like a trend on Facebook. But like listen, like anybody who knows me like knows I have like no interest whatsoever in using this channel as like a platform to spread hate or, you know, have a bunch of like neo-Nazis on. Like, no, I'm not doing that. But there's still that fear that, like, what if somebody just like sees a 3-second clip of this show and decides that, you know, Dave and Jack said something we don't like?
Well, I mean, look, that's what they did to PewDiePie. And that's one of the reasons why Gen Z, I think, is not, you know, obviously I'm generalizing here because they have their boneheads too and whatnot. But you know, Gen Z, you know, PewDiePie has like 100 million subscribers, right?
100 million?
100 million.
Holy shit.
I don't want to lie. Check out his YouTube channel quick. Make sure I'm not lying.
Sure.
He was in a race. He was in a race. You know, for a long time he had the most subscribers on YouTube, and then he was in a race with was it not Channel One? An Indian music channel, and a
Holy, I'm looking at it now. I'm struggling to wrap my mind around this number. That is 100 million.
Yes, 100 million people subscribe to him.
Holy shit.
So here's the thing: is that, and you could say that people like him, like not just him, but people like him built YouTube. And now,
yeah, they got people onto the platform.
Right, and now YouTube is turned around, and so here's what happened with PewDiePie, and this is why I kind of go back to Gen Z, is that PewDiePie, you know, he's impish. He likes to play pranks. He does a lot of gaming. He plays a lot of Minecraft and things like that people like to watch. But he also just does funny stuff that he thinks is funny, stuff that his audience thinks is funny.
I can honestly say I have never seen anything.
No, I mean, it's not our generation. You know, it's not our generation.
I'm part of the square community.
Yeah, you're a normie. You know,
I accept that.
We're boomers. You know, we're boomers. That's what we are. We're boomers. So, you know, you have Trump calling out fake news, and everyone's like, oh, you know, they get so, like, the media gets so offended by this idea of fake news. But then they turn around and PewDiePie, who has 100 million subscribers, which dwarfs the Wall Street Journal, right?
Yeah.
By magnitudes, right? So he did a couple of pranks. Well, I think one time he came out dressed as Hitler. But you know, like that's when Sarah Silverman just got tossed to the wolves.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Sarah Silverman, really?
Yeah, Sarah Silverman just got tossed to the wolves for a joke she made years ago. I don't remember if it's because at one point she dressed up like Hitler and went on to a talk show. But this is years ago.
She's a Jew too.
Yeah, and she may have done blackface on one of her shows. But the thing is that when and I'm not a fan of Sarah Silverman. I've never appreciated her humor. But the thing is she's a comedian.
Not even in Way of the Gun.
I did appreciate her humor in Way of the Gun. Way of the Gun. Way of the Gun is a great movie. If you haven't seen it, check it out. But you have to if she goes out there in blackface, she is not. Her intent is not.
You know, yeah. I mean, I think we know enough about her to know that it's a joke or it's lampooning or satire.
Right, 100%. So she just recently lost a role on a movie because somebody brought that up.
Wow.
Yeah. But I mean, I can't really feel that sorry for her because she's been part of the problem. She's been part of cancel culture. So when she gets canceled, how do you feel sorry for that?
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, it's like being a communist. Like someone is always more communist than you are communist, you know, and eventually the movement just starts cannibalizing itself.
Right.
You know,
and the people at the top are never really communists. They're just living in absolute wealth.
Yeah.
While everybody else is standing in line for bread. But so I want to go back to PewDiePie real quick. So he's done a couple of Hitler jokes, and then I think that he at one point, just as a social experiment to show what people would do for money, is he hired a couple of guys. I don't know if they're black guys. I can't remember now. But he hired a couple of guys to stand on the side of the road with a sign that said Hitler did nothing wrong, right? And I can't remember, I'm pretty sure that they were minorities.
But he's still on YouTube.
But what happened was everybody who watches his channel knows exactly what he was doing.
He's a troll.
They knew he would. They know who he is. These reporters from the Wall Street Journal, however,
take it literally.
Well, I don't even think they took it literally. But what they did is they took like those two cuts out of how many ever episodes of how many ever hours of programming he's done. And they reported on it, and they're like, your kids are watching a white supremacist. Your kids, And so
I remember when the New York Times did that to Larry Vickers, who's a shooting instructor, former Delta operator, and he does marksmanship courses, and he posted like 1 or 2 pictures on his Instagram about the Rhodesian Light Infantry,
right,
or something like that, talking about the Rhodesian Bush War.
Yeah.
And like they basically like went all in after him, like saying like, oh look, this guy's supporting white supremacist government and stuff like this. And it's like, bro, like, well, just because you study, I mean, I've read a lot of books about the Rhodesian Bush War. I mean, if you study warfare, I mean, you're going to study Nazi tactics,
right?
Not because you support the ideology,
right,
but because it's important to know how that military operated.
Right. Like you look in anything, you can say that like these guys did this well, and you're not saying I'm a fan.
The Nazis they had a military machine. Anyone who is a serious military historian has studied.
Great, there goes our channel, Jeff.
They're going to shut me down for saying.
Great. So,
but then, I mean, it's a whole other subject. I'll get into.
Well, I mean, look, yeah. So, it was like when Black Hawk Down came out. Do you remember like the uproar about Black Hawk Down?
I saw the movie when it came out. I've heard criticisms of it over the years that like it basically just portrayed black people as like this big horde, this big mass that was attacking.
They said that it painted the Somalis like in a barbaric way, and the thing is like, well, that actually happened, and it not only did that happen, they mutilated the bodies, which they didn't show. And the thing is, what these people understand is like, it's not painting black people in any way. It's not painting even Somalis in any way. It's painting it's painting a mob. I mean, who's bitching about Gangs of New York, which was, from what I understand, a pretty historically accurate movie.
Somewhat.
But particularly about the relations between the Protestants and the Catholics and
everyone hated each other.
Right.
Yeah.
So Gen Z sees this, right? They hear Trump, say fake news. Now, whether they like Trump or not is irrelevant, because I'm sure that they're kind of split, whatever, just like the rest of the country. But they hear Trump say fake news. Then they see the Wall Street Journal intentionally, like they did it with intention to go in and cherry pick
your point of view,
cherry pick these two instances, and so Gen Z's like, oh, it is fake news. It 100% is fake news,
Well, I think that's like why a lot of people got attracted to Jordan Peterson. Because like you would see the press say like these like wild things about him.
Yeah.
Saying like I remember there's the whole thing like saying he supported forced monogamy or something like that we should force young women to marry men or like crazy stuff. And then it was like you go and watch the actual interview with him about that subject, and it's like the exact opposite of what the press is saying. Right. And now you have to compare these two things. It's like, okay, like the media in this case has a very clear agenda.
Right.
And they're not telling you really what's going on.
Right.
It's completely decontextual.
Right.
And I think that, I guess the press just does it for clicks or something. The same way they handle Trump.
Yeah.
And instead of just treating these people as they would any other subject and reporting candidly in an unbiased manner, they hype it up. And that's something we do in our culture, all the time.
Well, and again, I think that's also changing. And this is why I'm not really worried about cancel culture. I mean, I don't mean I'm personally not worried about it. Like, it terrifies me in the sense.
Coming for you, Dave.
What I'm saying is that I'm not worried about cancel culture. Like, cancel culture is winding down. Like, people are tired of it. And, when you saw all these, was it Gawker Media? Gawker Media sold for $1 billion. Was that right? $1 billion?
I really don't know.
I think so. Was it Gawker Media? Anyway, and they're during the age of rage, which again, I think we are leaving now. Like it's
on a downward.
It's on a downward spot because that was when, and the problem is that mainstream media started both Fox on the right and CNN and MSNBC on the left. Like, they learned their lesson from the internet news sources, because what the internet news sources found for a while is that all they had to do was write something egregious, and it didn't matter if a person agreed with it or disagreed with it. They would go there and they would get site visits. So then they could report their traffic as X amount to advertisers. Advertisers, they'd say, look, your advertising is getting exposed to this many people. How many people, how much are you paying, CNN? And what are their numbers? And so these companies were valued for like massive amounts of money. But people got tired. People got tired about a news story coming out every day about what to be out. I mean, look, did you see any of the stuff about like the Joker? Like how...
someone was telling me that it was, there's someone complaining like this movie will inspire men to go out and kill people.
Yeah,
or something.
that.
But it's like, I only hear like residual, like somebody will come to me and say, can you believe what this idiot?
Well, it's not just it'll inspire. It's not just it'll inspire. It's like, oh, I'm supposed to feel sorry for a man who has a bad day. And, it's like, for a white guy who has a bad day, it's like
pushing into a vat of acid.
Yeah. Well, so the thing is that for the most part, there's a certain self-sustaining element on Twitter and whatnot, this whole outrage thing, they all pat each other in the back, they all get their likes or whatever, retweets and stuff. But all these companies, HuffPo just had a massive layoff, Vox is having issues, like...
BuzzFeed had a lot of issues.
Yeah, like you can't...
I think Vice is going to hit some hard times.
Right, you can't sustain that type of outrage. Like, people get tired, and then people also get smart, and they start visiting these websites on like archive, the archive.org or whatever it is, so they don't give them clicks. And the thing is that these journalists, these people who write these articles about whatever, still haven't learned that it's kind of over. It's ending.
Look, we got to wrap this up.
Yeah, sorry guys.
But we got to also we'll continue this conversation. No one has figured out what the model is for news, and you're right that the outrage model has been going on for years now. There are a number of people, including some people I'm talking to, who want to figure out how to bring it back to more like unbiased news where you have expert opinions or expert facts,
right.
You could even say.
Right.
But the data is very overwhelming that people still want the emotional reaction.
Well, sure they do. Well, it's not necessarily what they want, but it's what they respond to.
It's a
soap opera.
It's what they click on.
Yeah, exactly.
So someone has to figure out how to change the dynamic where you're getting that little serotonin hit from facts instead of outrage. But that's a whole other conversation. We'll have to talk about that again.
It's challenging.
Yeah. So we had a bunch of people tune in and watch this live today, so that's cool.
Awesome.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you guys. We appreciate it.
Yeah. And, as always, these streams will be up on our YouTube channel that you can check out whenever you want, if you missed it or you missed part of it. And, again, please consider supporting us on Patreon if you like the direction we're heading in and you don't find us too annoying.
Yeah, and if there are specific topics that you guys want like a whole show on, but it has to be a deep dive into something, because a lot of this stuff we can kind of gloss over, whatever.
Post-war Japanese economics, Dave, go.
You're going to have to realize, too, that I'm the dumb one. I mean, I'm just here because, good looking.
No, I wish I was the smart one, but I've always been in awe. I've known people over the years, I had one professor, and you could ask him a question. What was the role of the media in France in the 1600s? And he would 3-point answer off the top of his head. That guy was like God to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm not that guy. I'm not that dude.
I'm not that guy either.
So we're just a couple white bros with cameras on a YouTube channel that's probably going to be shut down because of your,
No, you were just idolizing the Nazi war combat techniques. We're done. We're done. Thanks, guys. It was a good run.
All right. We'll probably be back again later this week, right? We'll do episode 4.5.
Yeah, so this week we don't know what the topic's going to be, but it will be something about geekdom, where there's comics, gaming, maybe a little bit of
4.5 will be a little more lighthearted. We'll talk about entertainment. We'll talk about games.
Talk about the death of Lois Lane.
And Spider-Man had a girlfriend before Mary Jane. I found that out this weekend.
Gwen.
I didn't know that. And she got killed.
It happened in one of the Spider-Man movies. It was actually, some people credit that for being the end of Silver Age comics because
it got real.
It got real. Yeah. It was the first time,
I didn't know any of this, Dave.
Yeah.
All right. On that note, we will see you guys next time.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Dave.